This week, a major win for survivors of sexual harassment.
As of today, gay marriage is a legal right in this country, everywhere in this country.
At the beginning, not only for me, but also for all my generation, I would say, it was a moment that we finally had a chance to imagine, to have the opportunity even to imagine.
Same-sex marriage, Me Too, and especially the Arab Springs. These were all different stories that changed laws and even changed nations. Now, the stories that we tell each other in coffee houses, on the news, and social media, these stories have power. So we must understand the science of stories and how they spread or how they don't spread. To take a look at how they don't spread, we're going to take a look at Panama in about 1960s.
The CIA's primary contact in Panama. Noriega was head of Panama's military intelligence and had a long-standing relationship with the United States. He had been on the CIA payroll since the 60s. When George Bush became director of the CIA in 1976, under President Ford, he inherited Noriega as a contact. With support from the CIA, Noriega was able to outmaneuver his rivals, and in August of 1983, he became commander of the Panamanian military. In a sting operation codenamed Operation Pisces. In 1987, with Noriega's assistance, authorities arrested hundreds of suspects and froze millions of dollars in Panama's banks, severely disrupting the money laundering business.
Okay, we'll get back to our story on Panama, but first, new research out of the University of Vermont shows how there are 6 types of emotional arcs. Why take a look at emotional arcs? Well, let's let the new architect explain.
Now, my predecessor loved precision. His matrix was all fussy facts and equations. He hated the human mind. So he never bothered to realize that you don't give a shit about facts. It's all about fiction. The only world that matters is the one in here.
So we see this in a less evil way in narrative therapy, which is based on the premise that we story or recreate meaning of life out of the events that we experience on a day-to-day basis. And that is all based on the dominant discourses we experience. So, in the Matrix, we have the new architect who is in control of the dominant discourses going from bad to good, or from good to bad to good. And in the books that the University of Vermont took a look at, they had an author that was in control of it going from bad to good to bad. But in the real world, who's in control of these emotional arcs? Who's to say the story goes from good to bad? Maybe it's not one person, maybe it's not an architect, maybe it's not an author. Maybe it's the collective whole, and maybe that collective whole behaves a bit like particles. Kind of a weird idea, but hear me out.
People get together on a road, they form traffic jams, which is like something solidifying. They get together into groups, which is very much like particles do.
But it's hard to collect data on the temperature, the pressure, traffic of the dominant stories we tell that shape our society. But this metaphor helps us understand what might be happening in society, as the architect explains.
Here's the thing about feelings. They're so much easier to control than facts. Turns out in my matrix, the worse we treat you, the more we manipulate you, the more energy you produce. It's nuts. I've been setting productivity records every year since I took over. And the best part, zero resistance. People stay in their pods, happier than pigs in shit.
Think of the water turning to steam. Because of the amount of pressure the water is under, it can now be elevated to temperatures above its normal boiling point. The worse a society is treated, the more pressure it is under by the dominant narratives, the more it can withstand the higher temperatures and the greater mistreatment and manipulation, until it either explodes or implodes. Now, back to Panama.
Fellow citizens, last night I ordered U.S. military forces to Panama. The goals of the United States have been to safeguard the lives of Americans, to defend democracy in Panama, to combat drug trafficking, and to protect the integrity of the Panama Canal Treaty.
The 4 biggest, most important papers in this country all endorsed the rightness of the Panama invasion. That's the Washington Post, the Los Angeles Times, strong endorsement, the New York Times, and the Wall Street Journal. Every one of them. Now, a little body known as the United Nations had a vote about this. On December 29th, they voted by an overwhelming majority to condemn the invasion as, in their words, a flagrant violation of international law.
This metaphor of the water turning to steam invites us into the macro view. But what's happening at the micro level as the stories move through society or the network of connections we have with other people?
Okay, so the first concept to understand is the idea of private preferences and our ability to falsify those preferences. So our preferences, those are our ideas, our beliefs on the government, on society, on dating. So our ability to share those beliefs or not share those beliefs are what allows our stories to spread or not to spread, all based on our private preferences.
Now put that thing back where it came from, or so help me! Oh, hi! We're rehearsing a scene for the upcoming company play called Put That Thing Back Where It Came From, or So Help Me. It's a musical. Yeah, put that thing back where it came from, or so help me. So help me, and cut.
Okay, so the second idea to understand is the idea of diverse thresholds and social interdependence. So what is diverse thresholds and social interdependence? Let's take a look at the Me Too movement. So with the Me Too movement, there are a few people who went against the status quo and spoke up about the abuses that they were suffering. So those people had a very low threshold, while other people, it took them a while before they were going to speak out and speak against the dominant discourse. So they had a higher threshold. But because of social interdependence, the people who had that higher threshold, they saw the lower threshold people speak out first and tell their story. This allowed the story to spread and gave power to the people with a higher threshold to then be able to share their story. So this is the idea that really can make or break a story, spreading or not spreading, is the idea of social interdependence and diverse thresholds.
Making a list, checking it twice, gonna find out who's naughty and nice. Santa Claus is coming to town.
He sees you when you're sleeping.
He knows when you're awake.
He knows if you've been bad or good.
So be good for goodness sake.
Oh, you better watch out.
You better not cry. You better not pout. I'm telling you why. Santa Claus is coming to town.
Okay. The last idea to understand is group polarization. Now, we see this all the time in all different types of countries, but group polarization is really powerful and a bit bad when it comes to stories because it takes people with middling senses of view on politics, on religion, on dating, and it pushes them to the extreme. Now it's very difficult for somebody from this side of the political spectrum to talk to other people on this side, and therefore the story can't cross the gap in between the two polarized groups.
There was a moment for the history books today in Miami. The first leader of a foreign nation ever taken by force and brought to the United States for trial has been found guilty.
But defense attorneys claim the U.S. drug charges were nothing but a political vendetta against an unpopular dictator.
This is a victory for America's foreign policy in destroying countries who don't kneel and give praise.
This story of Panama was able to stop from spreading because we had a government and we had different players in the media who were telling one side of the story versus Noriega, who was trying to tell his side of the story, that he was actually working for the CIA, which the CIA confirms. But he was not allowed to present this in his defense in the court case because that would be a CIA secret, and because that was a government secret, he was not allowed to share that all the things that he had done illegally were under the CIA payroll. And this is how we had a story stop from spreading. There's enough pressure of the dominant discourses by the government and the media which allowed the story to stop from spreading.
The point of the invasion was to kidnap a kind of a minor thug Noriega, who was kidnapped, brought to the United States, tried, sentenced, long sentence, a sentence for crimes that were real. But he had committed them when he was on the CIA payroll, almost without exception. Small footnote. But for that, we had to invade Panama and kill however many people it was, a couple of thousand probably, and install a government of bankers and narco-traffickers, drug trafficking shut up, and so on. But a successful invasion and applauded here.
Is this all that encompasses the science of stories? I mean, this is not some abstract question for some distant planet. This is a question about mockery. This is a question about us fitting in. This is a question that sometimes deals with life and death and hope. Now, the voices of the herd are often the rich and the powerful who control the dominant discourses. Meanwhile, those that try to be a voice for the voiceless, their fates are often not so kind. They are the ones that get mocked, sometimes beaten and tortured, other times in extreme situations they become assassinated in life and then silenced in death. Therefore, let us tell stories that bring positive societal change for all of society, not just the minority of the opulent.